I think most people are really afraid of cancer.
Yeah.
If you could kind of sum up the fears of your average middle-aged person, it would be one word: cancer.
Cancer, yeah.
What do you do to lessen your risk?
That's a great question. Well, cancer, primarily is caused by food and environmental toxins. So, food, what kind of food? Sugar. We know clearly that pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, many of the common cancers, pancreatic cancer, are caused by something called insulin resistance, which is basically
pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, which is pre-diabetes or poor metabolic health. And here's the kicker, Tucker. 93.2% of Americans are in poor metabolic health, meaning they have some form of pre-diabetes or insulin resistance. They have high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they're overweight, or they've had a heart attack or stroke.
This is a good argument towards universal health care. If everybody had access to the doctors, and it didn't, cost them an arm and a leg to go, it'd be easier to treat these preventable symptoms and reduce the amount of people with pre-diabetic cancers and the such, as well as we could reduce the amount of high fructose corn syrup and processed foods and stuff. It's another good argument towards access to fresh food for people to eat instead of just highly processed foods.
That means 6.8% of us are not sick at some level, and that poor metabolic health is driving all these conditions, whether it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, dementia, depression, infertility, so many different things, even acne. Which is
really?
Yes. So this is our food system is the biggest killer on the planet.
I have too many questions for you, okay. But I just want to take out one point that you made and ask you to go a little deeper. Depression.
Yes.
There's a connection between sugar and depression.
Absolutely. At Harvard and Stanford now, there are psychiatric departments that study this. Metabolic psychiatry is at Stanford, and they're studying the effect of insulin resistance and prediabetes and poor metabolism that comes from eating sugar and starch, flour, and how that affects our brain. At Harvard, there's a department of nutritional psychiatry that studies similar things, as well as the gut microbiome. There's a doctor at Harvard, Christopher Palmer, wrote a book called Brain Energy, talking about how he's cured schizophrenia and other mental disorders by putting people on a very low sugar starch diet. So
these low starch sugars, low processed food diets, that also requires people to have more money, because healthier non-processed foods that aren't high in sugars and stuff, are more expensive than their more processed versions. So is Tucker here advocating for higher wages?
Absolutely. The data is there. There's no question. There's actually a big trial that was done in Australia, I think, and they used something called, what was the study called? The SMILE trial. SMILE trial, studying depression, right? They come up with these names. So basically using dietary interventions to treat depression, and they found that it worked better than drugs. And it is basically getting rid of the junk food and eating real food. And they found that I wanted to call it the GLAD diet, as opposed to American diet, which is called the SAD diet, the standard American diet.
Yeah, well, it certainly is a SAD diet. I mean, again, too many questions, but when I
wrote a book about this, by the way. It's called The Ultra Mind Solution: How to Fix Your Broken Brain by Fixing Your Body First. And a lot of the mood disorders, the depression, the suicidality, the violence we see, often the sort of polarization of our society, I believe in part is related to our diet. There was a study I quote in my book, Food Fix, which is about our food system and how to fix it, where they looked at juvenile detention centers, and they found that there was a 97% reduction in violence in the juvenile detention centers when they gave them healthy food.
Oh, no surprise there. People are happier when they actually have, good healthy food to eat. Everybody doesn't want to eat, junk food or processed foods all the time. But when you're low income, you don't have much of a choice. But here, all Tucker is doing is saying, hey, we have a problem here. Here's what you could do. But that doesn't actually solve any of the problems when people can't access the healthier foods.
There was a 75% reduction in restraints and 100% reduction in suicides which is the third leading cause of death in these teenage boy populations. Just by giving them healthy food.
And by healthy food, it sounds like you mean big picture reducing the amount of sugar.
Yeah, I mean, eating real food, stuff that your great-grandmother knew was food, right? If your great-grandmother, wouldn't know what a Pop-Tart is, right?
Right.
But she knows what a carrot is, or a chicken, or an egg, or rice, or whatever. Like, it's food that you would recognize where it came from the field to the fork. There weren't a million steps that deconstructed the ingredients, reassembled them into what we call ultra-processed food, which is unrecognizable from its original form. And for every 10% of your calories is ultra-processed food, your risk of death goes up by 14%. And
Okay, so here, this is another good argument for, universal food benefits. Everybody should be able to go, everybody should be able to get like some kind of SNAP benefits and be able to go buy healthy food. If Tucker and the Stew truly cares about people accessing healthier foods, you need to also advocate for people actually being able to get a hold of these healthy foods. You can't just tell people, hey, eat healthier when they don't have the money to buy the healthier foods.
our diet is 60% ultra-processed food, and kids is 67%. It's a national emergency, honestly. I mean, there's 6 million people that die from COVID globally, but 11 million people die every year from bad food.
And those who don't die have reduced joy in their lives and more confusion in them.
Right. There's something called quality of life years that doctors use to analyze the effect of things. 255 million years lost in terms of quality of life.
But I mean, the numbers that you just gave point to the deeper problem, which is it's not easy to quit eating this stuff.
No, it's not.
Like you talked.
Well, actually, it is easy to quit eating this stuff when you get more money. When people are able to acquire more money, they're able to pay for healthier foods, which means they're going to eat less processed and junk food because they now can afford to buy those foods. One of the big issues is affordability of food. Every day food gets more expensive. People's wages don't rise, so people are forced to buy the cheaper, more processed foods.
People who quit alcohol. I quit alcohol and cigarettes.
You can't quit food.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's one thing to stop drinking or stop smoking. Again, done it. But wheat thins, Oreos, that's way harder.
Oh, totally.
Why?
They're biologically addictive. I know you've had Michael Moss on the show.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book called The 10-Day Detox Diet about the biology of how this affects us. And even if we don't know what we're eating, in other words, there was a study that looked at overweight guys. They gave them 2 different kind of milkshakes on separate days. One milkshake, and they were identical. Same protein, fat, carbs, fiber, everything was the same, except the kind of carbohydrate in one of the drinks was a rapidly absorbed carbohydrate, like sugar.
Yes.
And the other one was very slow, didn't cause a spike in sugar. They found that the group who had the high spiking sugar milkshake, they obviously had more adrenaline in their body, more cortisol, the stress hormone. They had more blood sugar elevations, insulin, cholesterol, all that went up. But was really, and they were hungrier, but was more important, they did brain imaging. And they found that the addiction center, the same center that's lit up by cocaine or heroin or cigarettes or whatever, is lit up by sugar.
Yeah, it's been known for like a while now that sugar is just as addictive as other hard drugs for the brain. I mean, big reason for that is, the brain, is fueled by sugar, so it's definitely going to be, more prone to want that compared to other things. But that is the reason why there's a lot of sugar found in pretty much all foods nowadays. Even foods you wouldn't really suspect of having sugar. It's usually called, high fructose corn syrup, which is, just sugar gotten from corn.
So what's, and that's very obvious, I think.
Well, yeah, nobody's going to binge on a bag of avocados, but you can go through a bag of Oreos like...
Well, that's totally right. In fact, you can't.
No, you can't.
It's self-limiting.
Right.
Well, no, I mean, you could. You could binge on a, bag of veggies if you wanted to. It's just not as affordable as, buying a box of cookies or something, or a bag of chips. You can get a bag of chips and a can of pop for a couple bucks, but some healthier foods, it's going to be $4, $5, $6.
You try to binge on avocados, and your body says, you know what, I've kind of had enough avocados, and we're fine now.
That's right, because there's no nutrition in the other food. So our body is designed to look for nutrition, to hunt for things. Animals do this. They eat and forage on many different plants if they're left in the wild because they know they need to get this vitamin from this one and this thing from that one. I mean, they're not obviously thinking, I need to get my vitamins.
They're driven by instinct.
Yeah, and so we should be the same way, but we've removed ourselves from our food in such a way that we've decoupled our normal biological constraints on overeating, and we actually now are eating way too much food. One study looked at ultra-processed food consumption versus regular real food. And when people were allowed to eat whatever they wanted in a controlled environment, the people who were given ultra-processed food ate 500 calories more a day.
Yeah, that's because those highly processed foods, have less nutrients. So you're going to be, your body is going to want to eat more of that to try to get more nutrients compared to healthier foods, which would have more nutrients, which means the body would want to eat less of it.
Oh, yeah. And you add that up over a year, that's 52 pounds of weight gain with those excess calories, just from eating ultra-processed food. So you have to think of it as a drug. I think of sugar as a recreational drug. Do I eat sugar? Absolutely. But do I take it as a regular part of my diet? No. And I think if you understand that it's a dangerous substance and there's no real safe level, then you can actually start to organize your life so you can change the way you're eating, create your health, and then you're not going to crave it. You're not going to want it. You're not going to be hungry for it all the time.
What's the key to making the break with your current diet?
It's a great question. I think it's motivation. People need to understand that they have a problem that's not their fault. And I think a lot of the narrative out there from the food industry, the government, professional associations, Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, American Heart Association, Diabetes Association, is that basically all you have to do to lose weight is eat less and exercise more. And the implicit message in that is that it's your fault you're fat. If you don't eat less and exercise more, it means you're a lazy glutton.
Well, this is funny because usually that's what right-wingers claim about people who are overweight. Yeah, oh, you're too lazy, you can't eat healthy, you should do this, you should do that, it's all your fault. But now they want to say, it's not your fault, it's the fault of the food system and stuff, which, yeah, I mean, the way our system is set up, it has a big impact on people's health and stuff. I just find this hypocrisy right here to be rather funny.
And the science just does not support that fact. As per that recent study that I just mentioned, where if you eat the wrong foods, you eat more. So our biology is being hijacked, our hormones have been hijacked, our brain chemistry has been hijacked by the food industry in such a way to drive our behavior. Now, was that intentional? Probably not. But it was a side effect of the drive after World War II to create an abundance of calories and food for a hungry, starving world. And the way they did that was industrialization of agriculture, was large monocrops of corn and soy and wheat, and that led to this cheap, abundant source of raw materials for the food industry to make all kinds of stuff. So and as soon as we kind of entered into that processed food cycle, we've seen obesity spike. Now, when I was born, obesity was 3.4%. Now it's 42%. That's 12-fold increase in my lifetime.
And part of that definitely is due to high fructose corn syrup and stuff, and a lot of our foods. You got all that excess sugar people are eating, and that is going to be converted into fats. The subsidization of corn was the big driving factor behind a lot of these processed foods, because companies could buy up a bunch of high fructose corn syrup for cheap and add that to their products to make it taste better. It allowed them to make a cheaper product to be sold en masse.
When I went to medical school, there was not a single state that had an obesity rate over 20%. Now there isn't a state that has an obesity rate under 20%, and most have 40%. So that's not genetic. And what's happening now in the dialogue around obesity is that, it's genetic. We need these drugs like Ozempic, and we'll go.